Thanks, Tom. Our last speaker this morning is Jerry DiPopolo of the Cannon Power Group. He's the Business Development Director for Cannon Power, which is a San Diego-based company that develops, constructs, operates, and maintains utility-scale wind and solar projects. This morning, Jerry is going to share with us how timing, capital, policy change, technology change, and financial markets impact a utility-scale developer's ability to chart a development program across a vast array of early to late stage renewable energy projects. Jerry?
Cool. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. I'm also fresh back from the wind conference up in Anaheim, and that's always sort of an energizing as well as a deflating event of sorts. Energizing from the standpoint, ton of energy. Everyone sort of concentrates and converges onto a location this year in Anaheim. In the meantime, no work's getting done back at the office, so a tad bit deflating. Interesting in the wind world. I would say it's been characterized correctly that things will sort of slow down, but that's been the nature of our beast for 30 years. Whether it was various tax policies, various economic structures or incentives, both here in the United States as well as overseas, have attracted sort of starts and stops of various types of projects, small, medium scale, and large. So it's always been interesting. What I like about this presentation, I borrowed this metaphor, this valley of death. Actually, I only came across it a few months ago, and it was because I was talking to some other sort of developers, startups, and they said it was sort of a term used by every venture capitalist they speak to. And it's funny because we just look at it as that's just everyday life as a developer. Every day is pretty much a bad day. You sign up for it. There's probably one good day and then back to a lot of bad days because you're always on to the next project or you're operating and maintaining the existing project. So there's just never a day of rest. So what I'd like to really sort of focus on is how to keep it boring. And you'll sort of understand what I mean by boring at the end of this presentation. But it's, I know the title of this conference is Structuring and Financing Cleantech Projects, but it should be Structuring and Financing Boring Projects. So keep it boring. And again, I'll get to that. Cannon has been around for 30 years. Our chairman, who founded the company in 1979, is still our chairman, and very same person who calls me up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning to ask me what I've done. So there's been commitment to this space, which is interesting because sometimes I also get approached, and when I say we, as a team, and get asked, who are you, and maybe you should try solar, or maybe you should try being a renewable energy company. And it's like, we've been trying for 30 years with some success, some failures. Don't let the failures kill you, because it will happen. But fight the good fight. In general, just by the sheer fact that, alternative energy or renewable energy versus conventional. Conventional has, 100 years? Maybe if you go back to the use of whale oil, 300-400 years, and wood, go back to when man discovered fire. So renewable is still in its infancy. So, lots of new technologies, lots of new structures, lots of just timing, technology 100 years from now versus what we think today is the newest and best little mousetrap. So it's an exciting time, but we carry a lot of weight on our shoulders. Markets, policies, customers. Let me sort of elaborate what I mean by that. But for us, for instance, new markets, we would consider solar a new market for us. We've been pushing ahead on wind for the past 30 years. Why? It was the cheapest relative to conventional sources. It was the most scalable. You could build large projects on the order of, back in the 80s, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt. Moved to the early 2000s, 100 megawatts, where we built in Palm Springs. And fast forward to 2008 through 2010, we just installed 400 megawatts in our Washington State wind project. And that's commonly referred to as Windy Point. K&L Gates was one of our attorneys and strategic advisors on that. And, it was a project that lived a lot of bad days, with a few good ones, but a lot of bad days, and I guess navigated the valley of death, but only by being boring. New sources of capital, that's the sort of, that renewable energy equals expensive. In terms of, it's very expensive at one particular point in time, and that's at the installation. Hence, you need to basically convince investors that, that one-time event, installation, where you have installed costs of, like on the wind scale, you have a 100 megawatt project, that's about a $200 million capital investment. There's really not much more capital that needs to be reinvested in that project, thank God, because that would kill your returns. And thank God, again, that the feedstock, the input, is quote-unquote free. It's renewable. It's recurring. It's wind. And so that conversion with, you hear the term bankable technology. Again, that needs to be boring and bankable technology because, you can get up to, there have been some companies out there, for instance, in wind, like Clipper, and some Chinese new entrants that are trying to compete on price. But for me as a developer who has to fight 1,000 battles across a 2 to 5 year development horizon, taking on someone else's challenges of, are they sort of commonly accepted as a proven piece of technology, could make life difficult, and could make life difficult at the very end game, which is the sort of project financing. So, for instance, if I were to do a wind project with a GE turbine, instead of, say, a Clipper or a Chinese new entrant, the amount of sponsor cash that I would need to put into that project, let's say it's a $200 million project, could differ between, say, 5% if it were a GE or a Siemens, to around 30 to 40 to 50% if it's a new and unproven piece of technology. Game over. I mean, you're talking big dollars anyway with 5% at $10 million. But now pencil in $60 or $70 million as the check that the sponsor needs to write. It's just kind of hard to surmount that. There are challenges throughout this development period. You have an idea, you have a location, you have, let's say, the beginnings of a contract, hopefully a power contract, meaning revenue, et cetera. But there are so many challenges that exist going forward that are known, especially with, again, I'll plug K&L Gates, but with the aid of good advisors and structuring artists like a Deloitte and others.